Hello, welcome to the Hellcat Hangar. Today we have with us Jack Berglund from Offshore Inland to talk about what Offshore Inland does. They're located on the Port of Pensacola. They're one of the longtime tenants out there. Jack, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, David, first, thanks for having me. Okay, appreciate being here. I love the hangar. This is a absolutely terrific setup for, especially in our business, right? I mean, airplanes, ships, you got it all here. But anyway, I'm actually originally grew up in New Jersey. Went to school at Maine Maritime in Castine, Maine. Got out of there many decades ago in 1984. Have been part of the marine industry probably for the last 40 years plus, okay? I've worked here on the Gulf Coast. I've worked in Canada. Had a great opportunity to travel pretty much around the world. I think the only continent I haven't been on is one, and that's Antarctica, okay? So it's been a good life, and we've been down here in Pensacola since probably about 2013, 2014. And, you know, this is about Offshore Inland, and we're a company that started in Mobile, Alabama, back in like 1989, okay? And moved to Pensacola in about 2012. There was a strong push to try to bring business into Pensacola at that point, and between the county and the city and the state, we were incentivized to move our entire operation here. And that picture behind you, you can see, is probably one of the biggest motivators, is access to that fantastic shop that both the port and ourselves have invested in, okay? I would say from the primary reason to be here besides physical facility is the berth, okay? We're a company that works in the port, okay? We bring ships in like the blue vessel behind us, which we can talk about a little more later. We have ship fitters, welders, burners, pipe fitters, electricians, machinists, and we do topside ship repair. We do fabrication. We do pipe fabrication, we do engineering, and right now we've got people working offshore on oil rigs. We got people working in shipyards on the West Coast, people working in shipyards right over in Mobile. Even have a couple people that are working down in Argentina on a jack-up rig that got a crack in it, okay? And we've shipped equipment down there and some specialized welders. We also have dipped into the wind market, okay? We were fortunate enough to be hired by a company called Demi that was installing Vineyard Wind off of Boston, and we got the contract to actually do the trimming of the jacket, and where they set the large accommodation block down, okay, that's on the jacket which goes into the water. We did all of the beveling on the jacket, the setting of the actual deck house, and then the welding out, okay? So, you know, we've got ourselves involved in a lot of things. We used to be predominantly very much an offshore related company. And I think everybody remembers the downturn in the offshore business in 2015 to 2020. We diversified, created multiple revenue streams. We're even doing Navy work right now. We're doing some work for Ingalls over in Pascagoula. Actually have a couple of big guns that came into the Port of Pensacola that we're storing, okay, from one of the DDG 1000 class vessels, okay, and doing fabrication work for them. So it's a diversified group. We're operating close to 100 people right now, and very much settled in the Port of Pensacola with a lot of great support from not only the port people, but the city.
So how many of those 100 are actually local or part of the community?
I would say at any one time we have as many as 40 to 50 people working locally here in the shop. See, a lot of our business is fabricated in the shop, and then we ship it offshore to an oil rig or to a ship, okay, and we do the installation offshore. But the vast majority of the fabrication work takes place right in the shop in Pensacola.
Right. And I've been in that shop. It's expansive and looks like you can get a lot of work done in there.
One of the things we're really proud of is we just took advantage of another company, decided to cease operations in Mobile. and we bought their burning table, okay, which is what you put large 8x40 plates on and CNC burn shapes and everything else you need for fabrication. So we now have a burning table at each end of the building, okay,
no kidding.
along with up to about 70 tons of overhead crane storage. So yeah, it's a lot of investment, but it's given us a lot more capacity.
Well, when you have some activity going on in there, which I know it's ongoing, we'd love to get back in there and get some shots of what you're doing in there. Maybe we
I
could.
know we did a lot of stuff when Blue was in, so that was
Right. We got
an exciting time for us.
Speaking of Jacqueline, because can't not talk about Jacqueline. It was the big blue building downtown for a long time, and
Part of our skyline, right?
Exactly, and not a lot of people were really aware of what was going on there. So could you just talk about that? Maybe from the initial contact that you had from them to how that all played out.
It's really an amazing story, because I mentioned before the oil and gas downturn in 2015, 16, 17, and we were predominantly a single market company, which was servicing oil and gas and rigs and things like that. We did some ships, but I mean, we were focused on that market, and obviously that market had been strong for decades, okay? During that downturn, a lot of things happened, okay? We learned to get very skinny, okay? We learned to cut our overhead to the bare minimum to be able to provide our customers still with the service they required, okay? We came up with a new general corporate plan to diversify into more markets, so we were not so single market susceptible, okay? And one of the interesting things I came up with is we lost a lot of our competition because they didn't react quick enough. They disappeared, okay? So we ended up coming out of that downturn stronger than we were. And one of the things that facilitated that was an amazing phone call that came from Blue Origin. That's when Buddy McCormick was still with us, okay? Buddy was actually our representative here in the Port of Pensacola. And Blue Origin is a space company. If everybody doesn't really know who they are, they were the guys that took Captain Kirk up, okay? On that ride, and it's owned by Jeff Bezos. And basically they had the vision of, similar to Elon Musk's SpaceX, the whole point of the company is to reuse the rockets, okay? And when you reuse the rockets, you shoot something up in the air, you come down, and you have to land the rocket safely on some type of platform. Unless you're out in Texas or New Mexico where there's large expanses of land, the local governments normally don't want rockets landing on areas where there's a lot of population for obvious reasons. So they came up with the idea of, let's land on a ship, okay? And they went out and bought a vessel called the Stena Freighter, okay? It was a European ro-ro. It's the blue ship sitting behind us. How we got involved was the guys that Blue Origin hired, because they're a rocket company, they're not a marine or a ship company, hired people that turned out to be former clients of ours from the offshore business. And their first thought was, let's call Offshore Inland, okay? They also called some other Gulf Coast yards, and we did have to compete, but in the end, we ended up securing the project, and the project was basically about converting a ro-ro vessel, which is a vessel that has a ramp that comes down and you can drive trucks on it and so on and so forth, okay, into a rocket landing vessel. And what was so cool about it was going to be an autonomous vessel when the rockets were landing. There actually was a boat that would come out of the stern of this and go to a command vessel. The actual 600-foot ship would literally be controlled almost like a video game from a remote vessel, and then they would have the rockets land on it. So we spent 3.5 years interacting with their engineering company, different other companies working on different aspects of the ship, but we were really the primary company that was doing all the structural changes and modifications to the vessel, and it was great. It got us through that downturn and kept us, helped us to continue to build our business. And in the end, unfortunately, they had made a decision where we were about 95% to discontinue the program, and they were going to move towards barges instead of ships. But we had a great opportunity to work with them, okay? And it was a lot of work. We averaged 150 people a day working right here in the Port of Pensacola, and I'd say 70% of those people were local.
Yeah, some of the numbers I heard was they had probably put in 250 million-ish or so into the project.
I don't know the exact numbers, but I would say you're probably not far off.
And did it go from like a 5 or 6 month initial plan to more than 2 years?
It was originally going to be something that was going to go on for probably about a year, okay? Their engineering extended, okay? You know, there's an awful lot of engineering going into something that has never been done before. So you're converting a ship that was purpose-built as a ro-ro, not for structure and a rocket landing on it, okay? And, you know, they had a lot of analysis to do. There was a lot of re-engineering to be done. And in the end, it ended up extending out for almost 3 years. And I think they probably spent a lot more money than they planned. But, you know, it was a great project for not only us, but for the port and for an awful lot of subcontractors working around.
Yeah, I mean, I had also heard that initially, when they first came here, they weren't aware of the extent of your capabilities until after they got here. It seemed like they discovered that you guys had a lot more capability than what they had thought. They might have to take it somewhere else, but as it turned out, until they did take it somewhere else, but it turned out that they stayed.
They
right
did
here
stay
at the port.
put, and I think a lot of that had to do with we're a company that cooperates with our customers. Okay, we try to show, you know, we not only appreciate your business, but we're not here to just get you one time. Okay, and I think the team on the ground at Blue Origin appreciated that cooperation while they were having a tremendous amount of changes and engineering modifications, and anytime you have a ship that's already, you know, 15 years old, you find things that nobody ever saw or anybody knew of, okay? Right. And so you're forever not only dealing with design changes, but, you know, maybe structural issues that hadn't got uncovered during a ship check, okay? Right. So yeah, I'd like to think that the whole attitude that we and the port, okay, and you can't leave the port out of this, because the port was extremely cooperative with us in trying to support Blue Origin, okay? They recognized there was a lot of regional benefits taking place, a lot of, you know, people, a lot of buying from different companies in Pensacola. So the city and the port did a great job in supporting us, not only from a standpoint of you know, being there when we needed it, but also supporting Blue Origin, okay? And giving them some space, sometimes no charge for it, okay? Because there was just so many benefits that were coming in, right?
So a lot of people don't probably realize this, but the ship did not have engines. At least that was my understanding. So
that's not true.
the reason, oh, is that right?
No.
Oh, good. I've been hoping somebody that was in the know.
The ship actually sailed here from Europe under her own power.
Oh, good.
Okay. She was a classed vessel. Okay. She was operating in a regular trade, in a ro-ro trade in Europe. Okay. I'm pretty sure she ran from kind of like the Netherlands down into Spain and throughout Central Europe. And she got here. Now, she did a tremendous amount of engine overhauls, okay, that was done by another contractor that worked under Blue. But no, she was fully under her own propulsion. She had her own generators. She was a fully functioning ship.
But they didn't want to use those engines to move the ship out of here. They dragged it out.
No. What transpired was the engines were going through a major overhaul. Okay, I mean, a complete teardown.
Okay.
And while that was going on, the ship had zero propulsion capability.
Right.
Okay. And, you know, by the time they finally decided to not continue with the project, okay? There was no sense in commissioning the engines,
Right.
okay? What they did with them, I don't know, but you know, the bottom line is the vessel itself was simply a flight deck away from being a completed vessel, okay?
I didn't realize it was that close.
Yeah, it
but
was
I'm-
owned by a company called Stena Lines in Europe,
Stena
and
Line.
Blue Origin bought the ship from them. And basically, Stena's ship management company sailed it over here to the Port of Pensacola. I think it was in October of 2018, and that's where she stayed. I believe it was until April of 22, something like that. Long stay.
Yeah. We got to stand on the pier and wave goodbye along
Yeah.
with all the.
Yep.
I said, here's a picture of a lot of people waving goodbye to their jobs because you know that was a good employer.
You know, one of the nice things is that the guy that ran the project for Blue, his name was Toby Seltzer. Since the project ended, we actually lost Toby. Fantastic man. You know, just great person to work with. But one of the other guys that was instrumental in convincing Blue that Pensacola was the place to go, okay, was Mike, it'll come to me, okay, Mike Percival, okay? And Mike is a captain. He had worked with some of the offshore companies. And, you know, when Toby got hired into Blue Origin, he actually brought Mike Percival, who's, I think, a resident of Gulf Breeze, okay? And, you know, Mike was super instrumental in trying to promote coming to Pensacola, right? So, you know, we did have, I don't want to say somebody on the inside, but we certainly had, you know, Toby, who believed in us from past work, okay? And Mike, who knew us from past work, but also was local.
Right.
So it'd be fantastic.
So, how important is the port to Offshore Inland's activities?
It is the reason we came to Pensacola. We already had fabrication and operating facilities that were, we like to say, landlocked, okay? The biggest draw for us was coming to the port where we would have access to a berth, a deep water berth, okay? And at that time, you know, you had the Amy Miller, who was director of the port, Clark Merritt, who was her number two, and a host of other people. And, you know, they were very hospitable and very motivated to get us in. And the fact that we could finally have, you know, a location on the water, okay, was huge to us, okay? That has been actually shown not only by the Blue Origin project, but we actually do large fabrication jobs. And people probably heard of Thunder Horse, which is a big production platform for BP out in the Gulf of Mexico. We've done huge fabrication jobs for them in which we've actually designed, built, blasted and coated and loaded onto a supply vessel right in the port and shipped out to the Gulf of Mexico, okay? Obviously, you can't do that from a landlocked location. You'd have to transport it to a port. You'd have all kinds of problems with dimensions over the roads and permits. So I can't underemphasize how important it is for Offshore Inland to be in the Port of Pensacola.
And personally, I find it fascinating to see some of the vessels that come in that you guys are working on, Seven Arctic and the other sevens. I don't know how many of you've had, but incredible ships, very fascinating just to look at. What was that big yellow thing?
That was the VB 10,000. It is a heavy lift vessel. It's on pontoons, and it's got almost looks like a bridge over the top of it.
Right.
And it's used for decommissioning oil wells and things like that, but it's also used in salvage. I've seen pictures of it used trying to right ships and everything. Very cool unit. Ironically, you bring that up. I'm actually talking to somebody right now that is doing some repairs and upgrades on it, and she's supposed to get a contract in Mexico. But we might be sending some welders to Texas to support the upgrade.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you have much interaction with any of the other port tenants as far as?
Absolutely. Okay. I would say primarily with Pate Stevedore, and also with their subsidiary company, or the other company related to Matthew Pate, which is Portside Services. Matt provides the tugboats here in the port, and we work together on crane service, we work together on tug service, and it's a good relationship. Matt's a good commercially minded guy, okay, that supports our efforts. And what it's a two-way street, because he's got tugboats, we're bringing ships in. When any ship comes in, it needs tugboats and a pilot to come in, so that's revenue to their side, okay? And at the same time, we actually provide them services sometimes too, okay? So really important. Our new pilot, since you bring that up, Matt Millstrip, super guy, super cooperative, super knowledgeable, and very much willing to take on a challenge, okay? So we're doing a lot of interacting with him on these ships that are coming in. So yeah, I mean, we're very fortunate. We got the full complement between the support of the port and the city, to our fellow tenants, to our pilot that operates out here in Pensacola, and I think another location nearby. So yeah, all those people are very important to our operation.
Yeah, that's good to know. Looking ahead, what's on the horizon for Offshore Inland?
Hopefully keep growing, okay? Hopefully keep providing opportunity for local people. We do a lot of interacting with the schools. We have brought in numerous welders and fitters that have come out of the local schools, okay, and enjoy great jobs, making very good money, okay, working both in the shop and working offshore, okay. We're continuing to try to bring work into the Port of Pensacola, and at the same time keep a substantial workforce that we can actually send them to the West Coast. I mean, we've had people working in Alaska, Trinidad. We have a good relationship with a shipyard on the West Coast that we send people out to all the time. We work over in Alabama, okay? But we're working with one company that we're hoping to bring in a vessel this Friday, okay? That's about 670 feet long, that we'll have some work on, and it'd be a long-term opportunity to stay in the ports, which is good for the port, because the port's trying to generate income based on wharfage. So again, that's another example. What's good for the port is good for us, right? When we have a ship in and they're getting wharfage, okay, or dockage, okay, chances are we're working on the ship, okay, which is putting our people to work.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, would you say that what's good for the port is also good for city of Pensacola?
I think that the port is an essential part of the city of Pensacola, okay? I think that that industry just lends itself to interest of people that come over to DeLuna Circle over there and always are curious about what's happening in the port, what ships are there. It's almost a tourist destination to see what's happening. And I think that sometimes it's underestimated how very important the port is to the city of Pensacola. It's not only been a part of Pensacola's history, okay, but I think it's a very important part of the culture of the city. I think it's a very important part of the draw to Pensacola, and even the fact is the port is an enterprise business of the city, and it's a successful business. Okay, just like the airport is a successful business, and a lot of that goes to the people that the mayor has running the enterprise businesses, and the one that I know so well is Amy Miller, who used to be the port director. Now she's, I guess, interim city manager or something like that, but she was over the enterprise businesses, and she's always got an open ear to what they can do to help us be successful. And at the same time, when we're successful, we're trying to make the city successful.
So you feel like you have adequate amount of support from the city council?
We get tremendous support out of Clark Merritt,
Yeah.
okay, out of Shep, out of Kenny, out of Amy. I think that it takes all of us to help the city council understand what our needs are, okay? In fairness, a lot of those people weren't brought up in the marine business or the port business, okay? And I think we have a responsibility when things are presented to them that relate to the port to help bring them up to speed on it and what the pros and cons are, okay? And I think that Amy and Clark do that. I think we try to support them in that, okay? You know, I'd love to see an air of true embracing of the port, okay? But like in any place, there's two sides of every story, okay? And I, for one, just think that the Port of Pensacola is terrific for the city. It's terrific for the people that are employed there. It's terrific for the businesses that are in the area, okay? They all benefit from the port.
Would you see a scenario where there could be port expansion to, include other companies that up until now have not experimented with coming to the Port of Pensacola?
You know, I know that there have been numerous studies done, okay? I think that the move to bring American Magic in has been a good thing, right? It's a very different business than ours, okay? It's a very different business than stevedoring or cement or aggregate, okay, or just general cargo. And I think that part adds to the diversity of the port, okay? I think there's room for other types of maritime businesses in some of the areas that aren't being used right now, okay? Yet at the same time, I think there needs to be a securing of the berths and the actual facilities where the vessels come in and the warehousing that support those, okay? And to keep that as a port, okay? You can only whittle away so far before something doesn't have the capacity to support the business that's coming in. So I think there's a happy medium there, and I think that, there needs to be port activities, cargo activities, repair activities like ourselves, okay? And then some of the other land that's a little further north on the port can be used for some of these other maritime related things. Schools, training, stuff like that.
How does the presence of the American Magic organization affect the work that you do, or does it affect it at all?
In the end, we interact with them. We provided crane service to them. We actually leased them one of our cranes. The last time they were here, that they used that crane to bring the boat in and out of the water, okay? So it was beneficial to us. I find that American Magic is very aware of there's other people in the port, and they try to work with you, okay? They try to show that there's benefits for everybody. I think it's a really cool thing to have in Pensacola. And I think where they are developing the operation, it's a area that had, not been developed from a port standpoint. There was an area where they were using for storage of aggregate. But also, my understanding is that they're going to finish up Warehouse 9, which goes back quite a few years when there was another company that was trying to develop it that was a victim of the oil and gas downturn, okay? So I think it's a plus for the port, plus for the city, and another tenant for us to interact with.
Definitely going to bring a lot more interest and attention to the port itself. So, well, I super appreciate you coming out. Is there anything that's crossed your mind that needs to be explained or said?
I mean, right now I think it's good. I mean, again, it's my appreciation is out to the port, the staff, the city. I mean, they facilitate us having a platform to do our business, okay? And we're grateful for that. I hope we keep getting that support, okay? Because I think it's good for the city. I think it's good for the port. We're bringing ships in, we're bringing jobs in, and I think that's all good for Pensacola.
100%.
Okay.
Thanks for watching.
All right.
We'll see you next time.